The first book of the Old Testament is Exodus. False. The first book is Genesis. King Solomon was the son of King David. True, Solomon was the son of David and Bathsheba. The Ten Commandments were given to Moses on Mount Sinai. True, God gave Moses the Ten Commandments on Mount Sinai. The book of Psalms is a book of laws. False. The book of Psalms is a collection of songs and prayers. Noah's Ark rested on Mount Ararat. True, according to Genesis, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. The Old Testament contains 66 books. False. The Old Testament typically contains 39 books. The prophet Jonah was swallowed by a lion. False. Jonah was swallowed by a great fish, often interpreted as a whale. Abraham was originally from Ur of the Chaldeans. True, Abraham's journey began in Ur of the Chaldeans. The book of Proverbs is attributed to King Solomon. True, many of the Proverbs are traditionally attributed to Solomon. The story of Samson and Delilah is found in the book of Judges. True, the story of Samson and Delilah is in Judges. Moses led the Israelites into the Promised Land. False. Joshua led the Israelites into the Promised Land after Moses' death. The Tower of Babel was built to reach the heavens. True, according to Genesis, people built the Tower of Babel to reach the heavens. David wrote the Book of Lamentations. False. Lamentations is traditionally attributed to the prophet Jeremiah. The book of Esther never mentions the name of God. True, God's name is not mentioned in the book of Esther. Elijah was taken up to heaven in a chariot of fire. True, Elijah was taken to heaven in a chariot of fire. The Old Testament was originally written in Latin. False. The Old Testament was originally written in Hebrew and Aramaic. The fall of Jericho occurred after the Israelites marched around the city for 7 days. True, the walls of Jericho fell after the Israelites marched around the city for 7 days. The prophet Isaiah foretold the coming of the Messiah. True, Isaiah contains prophecies about the coming of the Messiah. Cain and Abel were the sons of Adam and Eve. True, Cain and Abel were the first two sons of Adam and Eve. The book of Leviticus is primarily concerned with laws and rituals. True, Leviticus contains laws and rituals for the Israelites. The Old Testament ends with the book of Malachi. True, Malachi is the last book in the Old Testament. The Israelites wandered in the desert for 10 years. False, the Israelites wandered in the desert for 40 years. The book of Daniel includes stories of Daniel in the lion's den. True, Daniel contains the story of Daniel in the lion's den. Solomon's temple was built in the city of Jerusalem. True, Solomon's temple was built in Jerusalem. The book of Job addresses the theme of human suffering. True, Job is a poetic exploration of human suffering and divine justice. The burning bush encountered by Moses was in Egypt. False, Moses encountered the burning bush on Mount Horeb in the Sinai Peninsula. Joshua fought the Battle of Jericho. True, Joshua led the Israelites in the Battle of Jericho. The book of Ecclesiastes is known for the phrase, "Vanity of vanities, all is vanity." True, this phrase is from Ecclesiastes. The Ten Commandments were originally written in Greek. False, the Ten Commandments were written in Hebrew. The prophet Elisha succeeded the prophet Elijah. True, Elisha was the successor to Elijah. The Old Testament includes the book of Revelation. False, the book of Revelation is in the New Testament. Ruth was a Moabite woman who became an ancestor of King David. True, Ruth, a Moabite, was the great-grandmother of David. The book of Genesis contains the story of the Tower of Babel. True, the Tower of Babel story is in Genesis. The prophet Jeremiah was also known as the weeping prophet. True, Jeremiah is often called the weeping prophet due to his laments. The book of Genesis ends with the death of Abraham. False. Genesis ends with the death of Joseph, not Abraham. The Israelites crossed the Red Sea during their escape from Egypt. True, Moses led the Israelites across the Red Sea. The first 5 books of the Old Testament are known as the Pentateuch. True, the Pentateuch consists of the first 5 books of the Old Testament. The book of Proverbs contains a chapter known as the Virtuous Woman chapter. True, Proverbs 31 describes the virtuous woman. Nebuchadnezzar was a king of Israel. False, Nebuchadnezzar was a king of Babylon, not Israel. King David was anointed by the prophet Samuel. True, Samuel anointed David as king of Israel. The book of Isaiah is the shortest book in the Old Testament. False, Isaiah is one of the longest books with 66 chapters. The story of Joseph and his brothers is found in the book of Exodus. False. The story of Joseph is found in Genesis. The book of Jonah is one of the prophetic books in the Old Testament. True, Jonah is one of the minor prophets. The prophet Ezekiel had a vision of a valley of dry bones. True, Ezekiel had a vision of a valley of dry bones coming to life. The book of Esther is part of the Pentateuch. False, the Pentateuch includes Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. The story of David and Goliath is found in the book of 1 Samuel. True, the story of David and Goliath is in 1 Samuel. The Old Testament includes a book called the Book of Revelation. False, the book of Revelation is in the New Testament. The prophet Hosea was commanded to marry an unfaithful wife. True, Hosea was instructed to marry Gomer, symbolizing Israel's unfaithfulness. The Old Testament was written over a period of approximately 1,000 years. True, the Old Testament was written over roughly 1,000 years. The name Israel was given to Jacob after he wrestled with an angel. True, Jacob was renamed Israel after wrestling with an angel.